Alright, so kind of getting into, I think I've got my basic idea here like I went through in class. Sort of want to do something that's inspired by this kind of, I guess, retro wave thing. Daft Punk, Discovery Tour, you know, almost Back to the Future, because I mean they're not together anymore. But you know, if it were to be sort of a revival, but I want to sort of go through how I'm going to tackle doing this kind of curved dimensional text, which isn't, I mean, it's actually pretty challenging to do, but I think I've got an approach, so I'm going to work through. But my first step is just to get my colors a little more nailed. I've kind of sampled out some colors here from the Back to the Future thing, but when I look at Daft Punk, it's much more kind of primary CMYK. They've got this sort of real rainbow sensibility going on with sort of more of a fuchsia and a cyan, and indigos and stuff like that. And then also sort of a gold and silver, which I think I'm going to work on doing a stylized interpretation of this very classic, iconic graphic for Daft Punk, which I'm probably not going to get done in this one video. So I'm gonna focus on the word mark, just Daft Punk Discovery Tour 2021 or something. Just kind of work on that. So my first approach to this, like I say, is I'm going to use object distortion, which would be under warp, and I'm pretty sure I can use arc to kind of get it to wrap around, and then I should be able to use a like a free transform, basically an envelope transform, or free distort. I think will probably work to get the kind of perspective on it. I mean, it's not really perfectly in perspective, but I think that is going to come together. So first thing I'm going to do is just get my words worked out, and then I'm going to convert everything to outline. I'm just kind of working on black here just because I'm planning on making a black background. So I'm going to kind of look at some opportunities to make my type kind of interesting. I could sort of get a little bit of alignment here. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this word mark is the little kind of custom ligatures. There's only really that one, the C and the K. Could try and do a little bit of that. But I just want to get my overall typography kind of worked out. So get my palettes and things out of the way here. I mean, I could do something like that. Maybe not. I don't think I've actually heard this new Oliver Tree album. I heard some songs last summer, but I don't know that I've seen the full one. I kind of like it. It's kind of got a bit of a House of Pain sort of thing going on. Anyway, okay. I'll make an arrow shape in here. Let's get the word. I think I'm going to just do 21. Don't know, the tracking on that looks quite what I want. I don't even know if I really like that 1 very much, but it's too much like a 7. Let's track this in tighter. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to convert everything to outlines, and I'm just going to manually track things. This is looking pretty. I think this font, I kind of like it. So type, create outlines, ungroup. It's going to allow us to move each individual item. So I think I kind of want to track that. I would like that K and the Y. I'm going to scale this all up. I think I'm going to have to manually kind of make that a line. Kind of wouldn't mind that comma kind of hanging out. I think that might look interesting. Okay, so that's pretty good. Doesn't give me a lot of room for much of an arrow, though. Sort of limiting myself a little bit by forcing a ligature there. Well, let's see what I can do with tracking. Could definitely connect the T and the F there, couldn't I? I wonder why it's not the same thickness. Yeah, well, we're going to fix that. So this is where the Pathfinder tool is going to start to come into play. So when you're getting into building more custom shapes, especially with custom lettering, Pathfinder really becomes something you're going to use a lot to kind of unify shapes, customize your shapes, cut pieces out. So I use it a lot. So I just want this to line up. So I mean, I can just draw a rectangle with my smart guides turned on. It's just interesting that the T and the F don't have the exact same thickness at the top. That surprises me. This feels like I've got snap to pixel turned on. I do. So I only want snap to point turned on because snap to pixel can really mess your lining up. Why is it not snapping to freaking point though? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to just use the Unite tool to unite that all into one shape. Now I want to get rid of this. I want to have just one thick line going down there. So I'm just going to draw a shape over, and I'm just going to look at this sort of more like a cookie cutter. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard so I can use it again. I'm just going to punch out of the front of both of those. I don't need to use, right. Okay, so why that disappeared is these are two separate shapes. So if I want to knock out this shape off of the two separate shapes, I got to make these two things into a compound path first. So you do this a lot too, making compound paths. So the shortcut is Control-8. Definitely want to remember that one. Bring this to the front now. And now I'm going to use the minus front shape, and that's going to cut those out. And I'm just going to literally draw my own shape now here from here to here. That's kind of cool. A little more room to do a bit more of an arrow thing in there, so I'll get into that too. It's got the basic idea going that I want, so I'm going to unite that all together now into one shape. Alright, so kind of fun. Let's do a little arrow thing here. I think I can just follow the shape of the K here. I thought my smart guides, there you go, smart guides should line you up. I suppose this recording is going to get a copyright strike because I'm playing music in the background, but whatever, I don't care. Not monetizing this stuff. Okay, so let's line up there, that would work. Pathfinder Unite. And then we kind of want a couple of those little motion, 4 of them. Okay, so it goes from thick to thin. I could probably eyeball that, but if I want to be sort of picky about it, I could use the blender tool to make a thick to thin sort of thing a little more easily. I'm going to extend it out about that far. 50%? Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Object, blend, make. We're going to want to do object, blend options because it's going to do smooth color by default, and we want specified steps. And to see it, you got to hit tab, so 5. I think I only really need 2 steps because the number of steps refers to the number of copies scaled between your start and your finish. So if I want 5 of them, I would say 3 because I'm starting with 2, but I think I just want 4, so I'm just going to say 2. Yeah, perfect. That's what I like to see. Okay, so I'm going to expand the appearance on that now. So I'll just ask for that. So that just takes it, it's no longer a blend, it's actually 4 individual shapes. And I'm going to want this all to be a big compound path. I'm actually going to want the whole thing to be a compound path, my whole word mark, because we're going to be now working with like a stroke if I want to get this kind of glowy outline or whatever. And that's pretty. I'm just going to lock this black background down so I don't keep selecting it. I'm going to select this whole thing and I'm going to make it into a compound path. So Control 8. Okay, so now we're going to start applying those distortions that I was talking about. Let's try again here with Effect Warp Arch, but we're going to go minus 50%. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's what I want to see. Expand my appearance, Effect, Distort and Transform, Free Distort. Yeah, that's working pretty good. I mean, the arc there is a little straighter. I think, you know, if I were to go back and try that one more time, I'd actually bend it a little more. It looks decent there, but not, yeah, I am going to go do that one more time. Do it like 65. Yeah, that's a little better. But I just noticed something here. I would like to have, I think I want to do this stroked path with a gradient and all that stuff, just with different colors. And I could apply a stroke to this, but then it's not going to actually have that true dimensional effect. So I kind of actually want to have that apply to the whole thing before I add this distortion. So I'm just going to remove that distortion. I'm going to delete these over here because I think those are done. Let's go and put a stroke around this now. And it doesn't really matter what color I do. I just use this red spot for now. I don't want to ruin the interior shapes here. I want to have that stroke go on the outside of the shape. So let's really bring up our stroke palette. I'm going to put the stroke on the outside, a line on the outside. I could do that through the appearance submenu too, by the way. Okay. So I don't like this little tag that it's made here. I'm not super digging the way it's bending those, but I can go and fix that later in a second. But I like the way it's kind of going. I think the thickness looks pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to now go Object, Path, Outline, Stroke, because I want to be able to work with that stroke as if it was a shape. I don't want to be limited to what strokes can do. Oh, but it went and united those. Hang on. Undo. I want to move these guys away so they don't touch. And that's because I made them in a compound path. So I could either release the compound path, or you can go in and edit individual icon or anchors with the direct selection tool, which is what I'm going to do. Except sometimes if you let go of the shift key by accident, or if your shift keys are getting a little worn out like my keyboard is, it'll sometimes accidentally deselect. So I can do it again. Alright, so that's that moved out, and then I'm going to marquee select these guys. Just drag them up a little. Oh, shoot. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, am I editing it with the effect applied? Oops. Oh, that was weird. What did I do there? I don't know, but I gotta Control Z it, because that's not what I wanted. I want this stroke thicker, because I want this to be solid between these, but I don't want these touching. Yeah, you know what? I'm messing around a little bit. I'm gonna ungroup. I'm gonna release the compound path. So you'll notice what that's done is that released the middles of these shapes. You need those in there as compound paths, so we'll go back and re-add those. Okay, I think that looks about right. So let's first go and just thicken the stroke up on this group. Something tells me I need to remake my compound path before I do that, though. All right. Yeah, because I released it, I'm going to have to go in. Does it keep selecting that? It's locked. Leave me alone. Okay, what's going on with my layers here? I thought I locked that black background. Yeah, what did I do? Sometimes you got to bring in your... Like this is selected. That's my text grouping. Oh, I've accidentally grouped some pictures and things. I don't want that. Yeah, somehow I kind of went through and accidentally made a very complex, overly complex set of grouped items there. That's not what I wanted. I did not want these things on the side to be part of that grouping. Okay, so I should be okay now. Yeah, because each of these letters where there's a middle piece, those all have to be compound paths. Okay, so now I can turn this whole thing into a big compound path. So you can see in my layer structure that's greatly simplified that from a whole bunch of letters down to one single shape that now we can work with as consistent with fills and colors and whatever. Which is stroke thickness I kind of want right there. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, it's getting too tight if I go that big. So 4 point. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with that stroke thickness, but I do want the stroke to behave like a shape because I want it to be able to scale and stuff, or have some distortion to it. So object, path, outline stroke, that's turned the stroke into its own individual set of shapes. And that independently too in your layer structure, like what I did now, let's expand that grouping. You know, it's made this red shape one compound path, and then the white is its other compound path, and that's what we want, because now we can work with those like they're both two independent shapes. So it's going to be easier for me to apply kind of custom gradient fills and that kind of stuff. Okay, so now I've got this group working pretty well, and now I'm going to go back and apply my distortion fill to it, or just my envelope distort. Let's put this more in the middle. There we go. So that's looking pretty good for what I want. So now I'm going to expand this appearance again. And there we go. Pretty decent Back to the Future perspective pipe graphic with a little funky hour in there and think it's kind of capturing the shape and the style that I want. The only thing I don't really like a ton is this little tag up there, which I probably should have fixed before I distorted it, but it's pretty easy to fix, just eyeball it. Pathfinder to cut that out. Whoop. Okay, so that was where I wasn't working in my, I was applying it to the group. Select that group there. So now this little triangle path, if I now minus front, that'll cut that out. So that's better. I'm happier with that. Okay, so now we can start getting to work, having the fun doing the color work, kind of bringing in this this rainbow color palette. So let's go back over to our swatches here, and I mean I have the kind of the Back to the Future color sample, but now I want to get a little more of these pure cyan magenta type colors. So I'm just going to start here with my tool and just grab like a real pinky magenta. You know, I don't know that I want to sample that. Actually, I think I'm just going to make a straight magenta color set. And I've just noticed I've been working in RGB. So I mean, I'm still more comfortable working with the CMYK mixer. So you can change your color mode. Where is it? I think it's like edit document color mode. It's in here somewhere. There it is. Could have sworn it was actually directly under here, document color mode, but maybe you got a page setup or something. Shit. Bleh. There it is. File, document color mode, CMYK. Now the next time I open up the color palette, it should be in CMYK. Let's see, I don't know. Maybe it just sampled CMYK. Come on. Changed it. CMYK. Anyway, whatever. I could also do it this way. New swatch. There we go. So 100% magenta, maybe 10%. A little bit of cyan in it. A little purpler. I don't want that to be a spot color just because that makes it behave a little better in the mixer. So I can tint it now, which is kind of what I want. And then we've got this sort of indigo cyan color. I think we kind of, I mean, this is more of a green pure yellow, whereas this is kind of more of an orange gold yellow. So I'm going to want a different yellow color to add there. Yeah, we'll stick with the 10% cyan, 100% yellow. And it's kind of blue-green. It's almost like a chartreuse type color. Oh, I know why it's sampling RGBs, because these are RGB JPEGs. That makes sense. So that's fine. I can sample this way and then say new swatch. It's going to give me the CMYK equivalent. I'm going to get rid of those fractions. It's called a 70. And 61, sure. Okay, so those colors are pretty good. I mean, really, if I look at this guy, it's actually a really dark blue instead of a black, so that might be a little bit cooler. Yeah, I'm gonna want this kind of dark blue indigo color. Whatever, not too worried about the specific mix there. Yeah, I think that's about all the colors I'm really gonna need to get this Daft Punk kind of feel to the whole thing. I think maybe, yeah, I think I'm gonna want a really deep blue like that instead of black. All right. So let's go down here to my poster layout. I'm sort of ready to start roughing together. I mean, I haven't built any bleed into this. I should build some bleed into it. So let's go to Document Setup. We're gonna add a bleed. 0.125 is fine. That's just gonna give you a bleed guides. So for a background color, it goes right to the edge like this. We want it to bleed. Okay, so let's copy this over. Let's group the whole thing. Once I'm done with this, I mean, I might turn it into a symbol or whatever, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I mean, there's another thing here. There's a rotational aspect. Like if I were to scale this up, it's not actually... I mean, maybe not. Maybe it's purely just scaling. I sort of feel like it's been rotated a little. Maybe not. Smash the angle's pretty good there. Anyways, whatever. It's my graphic. I'm going to rotate it a little. Okay. And I don't know where I'm going to put it. Play around with that placement over, but now I want to work on the colors. So this kind of goes from that red to the orange. So I'm going to be going from this fuchsia to this almost straight magenta to the yellow on the fill on that. So I'm going to double click into isolation mode in this group so I can work in those, and I'm going to start building my gradients. Get my layers palette out of the way for now. Okay, so make sure I grab the white compound path there. One thing I've just noticed before I get too far into this, I have a group and a compound path. So I've got my red here as a group, and if I expand that group, all these little compound paths sub to that group, which I don't want. I want to be able to work with all these shapes as if they're one shape. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to make that into a compound path. So that's made that much simpler. So now I can isolate those and work in them independently with their own effects and fills and stuff. So let's just put down a basic yellow swatch fill, and then let's make a gradient over top of that that's based on this magenta. But I think I'm going to want it to be a double-ended one. Okay, so this is where we apply the multiple fill thing. So add new fill. I can switch this one to yellow. So we can see that that's given us a really nice pure blend over top of that. Guess that was the end of Oliver Tree, and now we're listening to Big Data. Okay, I'm liking how that fill's working. So now we're going to go and apply, I'm going to put a different fill on the red outline, which what was red. I'm going to change that to like I'm going to do the darker blue to a lighter blue type of metallic type grid. Double click into that group, select the red fill guy, and let's give us a base. I'm going to just try it with the base of that. It's kind of fun. Okay, so now I'm going to save this swatch first, and okay. You can, if you hit it right, you can replace a swatch and a gradient like this, so you don't have to rebuild your transparencies and stuff, but we'll see. Okay, I'm going to add a new fill, which is just this dark blue, just the solid blue underneath, but I'm going to tint it. And I'm going to put that underneath my gradient. Okay. And same thing, I'm going to follow the angle. It's not bad, doesn't quite have that high kind of reflectivity, that kind of those real hot white points in it, but I think I can add those again later, sort of more as little kind of highlight things. I mean, I'm more concerned with the whole overall shape of this, which I'm kind of liking now. You know, kind of work on that more, but it's got all the colors, it's got the shaping that I wanted. I mean, overall, I think it's kind of noticeable as being a take on the Back to the Future logo. And actually, in some ways, sort of a little more up to date, because it doesn't have these sort of funky little hand-drawn bits that you start to notice when you're doing these things in Illustrator. So I think that's come together pretty well. So it's 11:45. So yeah, at this point I can start kind of working on the other graphic elements. I mean, I wanted to do this kind of perspective halftone grid thing too. And I've got a pretty good idea about how I'm going to do that one. I'm going to use the effect, one of the effects in here, but I'm going to use the color halftone, which is, where is it again? I think it's under, it's called halftone, color halftone, pixelate color halftone. So, you know, you got to have a color blend to get anything out of that filter. If I just did a color halftone on something that's filled with 100% black, I wouldn't get any results out of it. But I could make a gradient that goes from just 100% black to 0% black. So I'm just going to build that gradient quick. So instead of 0% opacity, I got to set that to 100% opacity. And then I want to tint that down to 0%. And I'm going to make it radial. And I want the black on the inside. And I'm going to want a lot more black. So the middle part is essentially doesn't have any dots in it. Okay. So the way that this filter works is by channel. So channel 1, 2, 3, 4. Pretty sure it treats black. I'm pretty sure this refers to CMYK. I don't know why they don't specifically say what channel, but anyway. And then the max radius, which is, you know, what's the biggest kind of dot you want in your halftone pattern. So I want something pretty big, so I'm going to go 20. And I'm going to leave channel at 45, which I believe should take the black and just make it 45, but it's a little bit of trial and error with this filter sometimes. Okay, there we go. That actually made quite a bit more dots than I expected. Pretty good though, but it's not. I did actually want a few more dots in there, so I'm gonna undo that, and it's gonna make the dot bigger. You can also modify that effect in the appearance panel. So let's just go and reapply that. But I'm just gonna make this. What I did 20 before, I'm gonna do 40. And that's pretty much what I wanted to see, actually. That's not bad. Although I was kind of hoping for no dots around the outside, but it's pretty close. But you can expand this just right in the expansion, and it undoes it. And then I could say, well, let's do a little slightly finer dot, but whatever. That's pretty much all there is to it. But the reason it's just doing that one color is because I have 0% of all the other channels and just one black. So you just get a pure halftone. So that's kind of what I want in terms of my shape. But what it's done is it's created a raster element, sort of. It's a vector, but those halftone dots, if I go to outline mode, are not individual circles. So it's not like I can go and fill this with a gradient like this has been done. So I'm going to need to go through a couple of steps here. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to rasterize this thing so that it's turning it into a graphic. So under the object menu we have rasterize, which is basically make it into a JPEG. So you pick your resolution, high, 300, white, transparent, kind of doesn't matter for the purpose I'm going through here. You can create a clipping mask, but that's not what I want. I would just want a plain old vector shape out of this. So I'm going to go through and just let that rasterize. So that's done. And now I'm going to use the object image trace to sort of make and expand all these little dots into vector artwork. So that's now made this halftone dot, this simple circular halftone dot, and I can just, you know, I double click into it. It's basically a group, and I'm going to just select everything that's white within that group. So select same fill color, and then just delete it. So now I've got this vector graphic that I can fill with gradients and whatever, but I can also apply my distorts. So let's first get our gradients going. Just so I can play around with it, I'm just going to make a gradient out of each one, I'm just going to pause here so I can answer you guys in class. All right, so continue on here. I'm going to build these, just going to build a gradient out. So just for the purpose of being easy to apply over other colors, I'm just going to blend from 100% of a spot to 0%. I'm just going to replace that color out with each one. So that's just setting the opacity. I'm going to keep them linear for now. We can change that when we use them. So that's the magenta done. Pop the yellow. Yellow done. Green done. Okay, so that's a pretty simple process just to go through and build up all those kind of gradients. So let's now, we can get this orange to yellow to green. I kind of like that, so I'm going to just put that together. So my base color I think is just going to be yellow. So I'm in my appearance area, I'm just going to apply the yellow to that. And now I'm going to add a new fill on that group. This might be pushing the limits of what Illustrator is going to let me do with this. Actually, we'll see. Let's put the green on this way. So add new fill. Green. Grab my Illustrator's definitely kind of cranky with me on this one. Oh, before I do that, let's make this a compound path. That's why it's getting so cranky with me, because that's a group. That's not what we want. We want this to be a big compound path, not a group. So yeah, Illustrator will handle that much more happily. I mean, it's still chugging a little on the preview. It's not ideal, so it's getting a little on the complex side, but because when I did that, okay, maybe it's just cranky because it didn't know what fill I was trying to edit. There we go. It's okay. It's not rendering all that responsively, so it'll be interesting to see if it deals with it. Okay, if I go and okay, did I just make just this a compound path? Doesn't feel right, but it looks like maybe I did. Nope, that's it. Okay, it's just weird. It's glitching a little when maybe because I was in isolation mode in a compound path, which is a little different. Okay, so I'm going to add a third fill over top of that, which is now going to be this. And I'm going to take the gradient shaper tool, which I find I have to click twice for whatever reason when I do this. and bring it in that way. Not bad. I think that's, I don't know, I might not stick with that. But now how do we get that distortion, right? So we can, this is getting pretty complicated. I don't know how well Illustrator is going to handle this, but I'm going to use that, distort and transform, the free distort, which used to be called envelope distort. And I'm just going to and that's kind of making a little bit more of a oval out there, which I don't necessarily want. So let's, I mean, the free distort isn't really true perspective, so it doesn't quite do, got to mess around with it a little bit to get it to be right, but this is okay. Let's see what that does with it. Oh, well, that's interesting. It just did that distort on the one color because I just had that one color selected in my appearance panel. I didn't know you could distort just one color. That's cool. So it almost treats it like it's its own shape. Well, learn something every day. Okay, let's go and do that again. Yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to get. Let's, before I expand that, let's go take a closer look at what that did with those shapes. Kind of give it a weird kind of bend out there. That's interesting. I sort of feel like I almost am going to get a better effect if I rasterize it and then just shear it, but I suppose I could also just shear this too. That's possible. Let's take a look at, maybe that'll do. Like there is this envelope transform tool here that, yeah, that's actually going to work a little better, I think. Yeah, that's closer to what I actually wanted, and I don't have to go and expand the appearance either because that's better shape. So I think that'll work. And I suppose I probably could have tried using that on this thing too. I don't think it would have done anything all that different. But anyway. Put this thing in the background. I don't know if it's going to be that intense when I'm finished, but I can totally mess with my colors and stuff later. This is now kind of an independent, scalable thing that I can apply fills to or whatever. So I kind of like that. But I was sort of thinking I'd make this the backdrop to my kind of stylized helmet thing. But now that I'm kind of thinking about it, I might almost be overdoing it with the halftone thing. It's either you use halftones for this, or I do this more like a traditional kind of shaped graphic. Yeah. Well, I'll get my graphic done first, and then I'll decide how I want to render it afterwards. So I'm going to kind of use this actually almost as like a tracing reference. I want to just break this down into much more of a comic book vector graphic style. It's not going to be all gradienty and shaded, at least not to start with anyway. So that's going to be kind of breaking this down into two shapes. And I think I'm going to stick with this kind of rainbow color palette to try and see what I can get out of it. I think I've got enough. Okay. Just kind of was looking at this thing and I was almost like, feel like it could do with like a white outline or something to add a little bit of that kind of, Daft Punk has a little more, you know, these little sparkly bits, doesn't it? And I sort of feel like the outline of this word just needs a little more gloss, a little more something to pump it up. And I think I might be able to get that done by adding a white stroke just around this outline path. Let's see what it looks like. Let's go grab that compound path just in the layer structure here. So we're just going to select just that one. And then back over to appearance, we're going to put a stroke on it of 1. I'm going to align that to the outside. Don't want it to be too much, but I just want it to bump it up a little. That's not bad. I think there's some more I can do with gradients to give it a little more of that high gloss thing. But you know, we want to do these little sort of sparkly deals, don't we? And I think I might have a consistent graphic that I can use like a symbol throughout. So let's go and just quickly build something like that. So in technical rendering terms, I call this a farkle. So a farkle is kind of your core kind of lens shape, but we're just going to put a gradient in there of white. We're not going to put any stroke on it. And we're just going to make it a radial fill. Not on the stroke though. Keep forgetting that Illustrator lets you do that now. So there you go. There's kind of your beginning. But then we want to do something a little more interesting. We actually want to kind of have our little star pattern thing go on there. So I'm just going to draw a line, change that to a stroke. I'm going to use the stroke profile in this particular case. And I'm going to make it pretty thick like that. And I'm going to just fill it with white. It's maybe a little thicker than I want. There we go. So that's one of them. I'm going to duplicate that and rotate it 90 degrees. Put it back in the middle. Duplicate that again. Scale it down a little. One more. So in outline mode, it just kind of looks like this. I'm going to make them all line up right in the middle where I want them to before I go and convert these to shapes. First one I actually managed to hit pretty well by accident. Okay, so there you go. Got all those. Let's grab all these, and we're just going to, now we're going to outline the path to turn this into a group of shapes. That actually, you know what, before I do that, I'm going to do this a little differently than I normally do. I have a feeling it might look a little better. So I'm just going to grab these two first. Object, path, outline, stroke. So that makes those two shapes. I guess I could have done all 4 of these at once. Okay. So now I'm going to fill this with a linear white gradient, not on the stroke, on the fill. Because I kind of want these all to sort of intersect. So let's just save this gradient type 2. So I don't have to keep rebuilding it. I mean, I don't know, at the end of the day, I might sort of feel like this is over the top with this type of thing, but I don't know, it sort of feels like it fits the style, so we'll see. So I mean, up close, it's pretty vectory looking, but from a distance, it actually kind of has a certain kind of style. So I'm just going to group that all together and then zoom out and see how that looks. So the reason you might want to sort of build those is that you can scale them and rotate them and reuse them, but you know, a lot of times what I'll do with something like this, because I'm not super sure about the style of it, but I kind of like it for now, so we'll see. I'm going to make a symbol out of this, so. All right, symbols under palette. I'm going to bring up symbols now. And there's my default, whatever symbols that Illustrator gives you, which I'm just going to delete. Side note, there are a lot of quite cool little symbol libraries that come with Adobe Illustrator, including some dot pattern vector packs that essentially probably could have been used to do what I did with the filter up there. That might even be a little better. So you could look at those, but I didn't. Some of these are not bad as little starting graphics you can kind of use. So easy to miss that little library. Make a new symbol. Put the registration in the middle so that it rotates around its center. And now we can kind of go through and pop that little symbol around in a few places until we feel that it gets sparkly enough. I don't want to go too out to lunch with it. But you can scale and rotate symbols independently. It's not a ton different than cut and paste. But the real difference is if you decide that you want to change this graphic in terms of how it's done, change the color or whatever, everywhere the symbol applies, it'll change, which is kind of cool.